on the bench, we're at the Calgary Fly Fishing Symposium, and we're joined by Robin Sherabin. And he's going to tie us up what he calls an RS Quad Blue Wing Olive, a very original pattern.
The thread that I like to use when I tie my patterns is a thread color that matches the majority of the color that the insect or the fly pattern possesses. And that's sort of a takeoff from the old days when we used to use basically black thread. And I think that was probably because there was a lot of difficulty with the dyeing process. Now, one of the triggering characteristics, and this is mainly from Rene Harrop, is a trailing shuck. And for a trailing shuck, I like to use just straight Antron. You could use CDC fibers, which Rene made very popular, but I simply like to use the Antron because it's easy to work with. It's trilobal, and we'll just tie it in at the end here.
Any particular length you're using for the trailing shuck?
Shank length, because basically what you're looking at is that the shuck has to be the same length as what the original insect was, and so you don't want it to be overly long or overly short, because that doesn't match with the proportions that we're dealing with. Okay, the body, or the abdomen rather, of the RS Quad is simply the leading edge, a fiber from the leading edge of a turkey quill. And turkey is important versus goose because of two main factors. Number one, it's more durable than a goose quill is, and number two, it's also longer. So you can tie patterns that are a lot long or a lot larger than you would be able to with a goose. Now, when you look at, and I don't know if this is going to pick up on the camera, but if you look at the two edges, one side is slightly translucent and the other side is opaque. And what you want to do is you want to have that translucent side, which I have now at the top, tied in so that it will lay down first when you wrap this turkey quill forward. Now that produces a segmented effect. If you do it in the reverse manner, what you do is you get a color variation, but you don't get the ribbed effect. And I think the ribbed effect is a more important triggering characteristic than the color variation. Before we wrap that forward, we're going to use another product from the turkey, and that's the turkey flat. And the reason that I use the turkey flat, this is a material that A.K. Best introduced me to. Number one, it's very thin. Number two, it's usually already treated for water repellency. And number three, the brilliance of it, the whiteness of it, makes it so easy to see in the water that it's just unsurpassed as far as visibility goes. So you simply stroke the fibers together so they interlock and clip some of it off right next to the quill. And then the trick here is that you want to transfer it to your right hand. And you don't want to play around with it because as any fiber off of a feather, it's going to slide back and forth and you're not going to have a uniform post. So what you do is you basically let go with your left hand and catch it in your right hand and then just blend it together. Okay, and that produces the wing. Again, the wing length of the hook shank, I'm about halfway. I usually like to put the wing in at about 2/3 of the way up the hook shank. Just pinch that down and wrap backwards because you don't want to start losing space in front of your eye because we're going to deal with the thorax yet. And again, take the materials, cut it at an angle because we're dealing with a mayfly. And because it's a mayfly, we want to make sure that we maintain that taper all the way through to the thorax. Cover the stubs up. Bring the wing forward. Build a thread dam in front of that wing. Now we need to wrap in our abdomen. And again, the clear side or the translucent side is facing the eye of the hook. And very shortly you'll see the actual ridges that begin to develop. Now, if you wrap it the other way, what you end up with is not the ridges, because the ridges are wrapped over top of each other, and you end up dealing with a color variation. So you can see the ridges back here by wrapping it in that direction. Next, we need to put the thorax in, and what I like to do is I like to use a material that contains Antron, because this is going to be a low-floating pattern. I like to go with a darker material than the abdomen, and this is basically just straight Antron with some rabbit in it. The uni thread has, as far as I'm concerned, it's got enough wax on it that it doesn't require any additional wax. And a little trick here is to combine two steps in one. Just see if we can find one the right size.
So now what are you looking for in size? Like everybody's looking at the hackle. What are you trying to match up there when you're looking at your barbs?
I'm just looking at the length of the barb and making sure that it's going to extend back to the back of the body and extend over the eye of the hook. But before I wrap the thorax, I'm going to tie in the stem, and you give it a good robust body or thorax, not something skimpy or anything like that. Give it some character so that it differentiates itself from the abdomen. And now, just simply wrap 5, maybe 6 times. Usually 6 is a little bit too much, and you end up forcing the fibers upward. Now we'll just pull this back, tie off that hackle, clip it away, and then we'll just whip finish it, and that's the finished fly.
So now this is going to imitate a blue-wing olive, obviously, but it can imitate many other mayflies also.
Any mayfly can be imitated with this pattern by just simply changing the material. If you wanted a red quill, then you'd use the red quill color from a turkey biot, and of course red thread or orange thread. Green drakes work, brown drakes, gray drakes, PMDs are very popular. It doesn't matter what mahogany done. If you can match the color, you can tie the pattern to imitate the insect.
Excellent, Rowan. Thank you very much for the time. Interesting pattern.
Thank you.